Have you ever felt that something inside you cry out, even when everything around you seems normal? Maybe no one sees, but there is a spiritual restlessness that insists on not leaving you alone. And no, it's no exaggeration or illusion, it's a sign. The truth is that God's chosen rarely have an easy beginning, and the signs that mark this call are often invisible to ordinary eyes. While many wait for grandiose revelations or supernatural events, God works in the intimate, the hidden silence. And when you begin to perceive doors closing, plans crumbling, and an inner transformation happening without logical explanation, that's where the sky is whispering, "I chose you." But how to know clearly? How not to confuse trials with punishment or God's silence with rejection? In this video, you will discover the 3 unmistakable signals that you are experiencing spiritual preparation for something much bigger. Get ready, the truth may be uncomfortable, but it frees, it and reveals. There are people who feel a constant anguish, even when everything seems to be going well. It is as if something in the spirit is asking for attention, poking inside. This is not common anxiety, not an emotional problem, it is spiritual restlessness. God uses this discomfort to get us out of the comfort zone and awaken us for a greater divine purpose. When you begin to realize that old distractions no longer fill you, something supernatural is underway. This restlessness often appears at unexpected times in the middle of a conversation, during work, or even waking up for no apparent reason. It is as if the soul is restless for something that has not yet arrived, but is coming. This does not mean that there is something wrong with you. In fact, it may be the opposite. It is a sign that God is activating something new within you. What was once comfortable now becomes uncomfortable because your mission is changing. Many people try to stifle this sensation with entertainment, excessive work, or even religion without intimacy. But none of this solves. The only thing that really calms this restlessness is alignment with God's call. Begin to ask, "Lord, what are you showing me with it?" This simple prayer opens ways to answers that the Spirit already intuits, even if the mind does not yet understand. A practical example: try to be silent for a while with God every day without asking anything. Just listen. At first it may seem strange, but over time, you will notice that He speaks between the lines of everyday life. A biblical excerpt that helps a lot at these times is Jeremiah 33:3. "Cry to me, and I will answer you, and I will announce you great and firm things you don't know." Restlessness may be the beginning of your spiritual awakening. It is also common that, during this period, you feel displaced. Ancient friends no longer make sense. Certain conversations lose their shine, and your heart begins to search for depth. This is a sign that the inner transformation began. It is as if the spirit is being reprogrammed to a new phase. And yes, this temporary void is part of spiritual preparation, a space being opened for God's new to enter. And hey, raise a warning with light humor: don't fight this discomfort like a virus. It's not to medicate, it's to discern. Spiritual restlessness did not come to knock you down, but to push you toward your divine purpose. If you feel that you are in the middle of nowhere, you may be exactly at the center of God's plan. And that's just the beginning, because when heaven chooses you, it doesn't leave you alone until you wake up. You know those moments when everything seemed right, and suddenly, puff, does the door close? It can be a job that didn't work out, a friendship that broke, or even a well-structured plan that simply collapses. At first glance, it seems injustice or punishment. But spiritually, it is a clear sign of redirect. God closes doors that look good to open ways that are divine. The problem is that we often try to reopen what God has already ended. We insist on forcing relationships, opportunities, or cycles that have actually fulfilled their purpose. And the more we resist, the more painful the process becomes. Spiritual maturity begins when we learn to accept God's no as a form of protection. He sees the whole, while we only see the next corner. It's curious how, after the low dust, we look back and thought, "I'm glad it didn't work out." But in the midst of chaos, this perception seems impossible. Therefore, in these moments, the best attitude is to pray with faith and confidence, saying, "Lord, I do not understand now, but I trust in your time." This type of delivery activates the recognition of the sky. When you stop resisting, peace begins to sprout even without explanation. And make no mistake, not every closed door is a sign of error or sin. Sometimes it is precisely because you are on the right way that God closes certain routes to avoid distractions. Remember Joseph in Egypt? He was sold, betrayed, and forgotten, but everything was part of spiritual preparation for the divine purpose. Each no of his life was actually a yes disguised as God. If this is happening to you now, take a deep breath and avoid panicking. Instead of asking, "Why is this going on?" try to ask, "Where are you taking me now?" This simple change of perspective takes the weight of frustration and focuses on spiritual redirect. A powerful reading for this moment is Psalm 37. He reminds us that God establishes the steps of the one who trusts in him. And here is a touch of reality with grace. If you tried to open the door with the right key, it turned, knocked, and even pushed with your shoulder, and she is still closed. Maybe God is saying, "You're trying to enter where I don't want you to stay." Trust. A divine promise never depends on human doors. What God opens, no one can close. If there is something that all God's chosen face in common, it is a time when everything seems to go wrong at the same time. Tests intensify, forces run out, and the feeling is to be in an invisible spiritual war. But the truth is that this does not happen by chance. God uses the fire of affliction to purify, shape, and raise. It is in the heat of the struggle that the gold of faith is refined. Many people are discouraged at this point and think that God has abandoned them. But God's silence in the midst of pain is not absence, it is strategy. It is allowing chaos to reveal what still needs to be healed and strengthened within you. Inner transformation only happens when we go through the pressure. And, let's face it, no one matures in comfort. Spiritual maturity comes from ground floor by tears. A clear example is in David. Before becoming king, he faced betrayals, escapes, injustices, and humiliations. But each proof was necessary for him to become the leader Israel needed. Similarly, your battles today are preparing you to occupy a place that requires emotional strength, faith, and trust. God does not waste suffering, he converts pain into prophetic destiny. And if you have faced trials in different areas at the same time, health, relationships, finances, know that this is no coincidence. It is total cut. God doesn't just want to take you to a new place. He wants to make sure you are ready to stay there. Every divine promise is accompanied by a process, and this process requires deep spiritual preparation. Now here is a practical advice. Keep a prayer diary and record what you are living in this period. Write down your fights, feelings, answers, and even the silences. In the future, you will be surprised at how much it has grown. And when the blessing comes, you will know exactly where your strength came from. The book of James, chapter 1, is an excellent companion in these phases. He talks about how trial produces perseverance. Finally, breathe and remember, if the fight has increased, it is because the blessing is close. God never throws you in the middle of the storm without a rescue plan. Each trial is revealing the strength you didn't know you had. Believe me, the darker the valley, the brightest the light that awaits you in the end. And if it's hurting, don't be discouraged. The sky is closer than you think. A moment comes in the spiritual walk when, without notice, things they once excited are no longer funny. What was a source of pleasure becomes distraction, and what seemed waste of time begins to make sense. This inner turn is not casual, it is God realizing his priorities. It is as if he exchanged the glasses of the soul, and you come to see life with new eyes. It is uncomfortable, but necessary. You begin to realize that empty conversations tire you, that the superficial no longer satisfies. The heart comes to desire depth, silence, divine purpose. And most interesting is that even without understanding everything, you feel that you are being led by a mature force. This is spiritual redirect. God does not change the circumstances first, he changes the heart. And only later, the world around begins to follow. At this stage, many are reviewed to daily habits. Songs, series, places, even friendships go through an internal sieve. It is not judgment, it is discernment. Spiritual sensitivity increases, and you feel, almost instinctively, which brings or moves away from the presence of God. Inner transformation does not come like lightning, it comes as a subtle but firm process. And when you realize it's someone else. Want a practical advice? Make a spiritual cleaning in your routine. Realize where you are investing your time, your energy, and even your money. Books like Charles Duhigg's The Power of Habit can help you understand how small changes build great transformations. Spiritual preparation to live a new time goes through daily, intentional, and courageous choices. And do you know what is most beautiful in this process? You don't just feel lost, you feel purpose. The soul is paid, the spirit aligns, and even in the midst of uncertainties, is born a soft confidence. It's like something inside you said, now you are on the way. This silent certainty is one of God's greatest gifts. He doesn't scream, he directs. And who is attentive, follows. So don't fight these changes. If you are losing your taste for certain things, it may be because you are gaining appetite for something bigger. Spiritual transformation begins like this inside. And when the inside changes, the outside needs to accompany. This is when the world begins to notice that there is something different in you. But they barely know that it is only the beginning of what God will still reveal. Few moments are as confused as the one you pray, cry, seek, and the sky seems silent. No answer, no sign, no movement. But what seems absence is often direct direction. God's silence is not punishment, it is strategy. He speaks even when he silences. The problem is that we don't always know how to hear with our hearts. This silence can mean several things: test of spiritual maturity, threat of faith, or simply the waiting time for the best. And here is the uncomfortable truth: God does not always respond at our pace, but always responds in his time. It is in this interval that you learn to trust, not by emotion, but by conviction. Faith and confidence are not measured in the words received, but in persistence without evidence. Think of a farmer. He plants, watering, cares, and for a long time, he sees nothing. But he knows that, in the invisible, the seed is germinating. Such is the silence of God. He is working inside, in the ground of his heart, preparing the ground to flourish the divine promise. And when the fruit appears, everything makes sense. Not before, only later. In the meantime, the best you can do is to maintain the pace of communion, even without visible feedback. Read the Bible, especially the Psalms. Write down perceptions. Fast. Stay sensitive. Books like In Your Footsteps, What Would Jesus Do? They help maintain focus on Christ's character during the moments of apparent heavenly pause. Spiritual preparation continues, even when heaven looks silent. Many frustrate and think about giving up at this stage. But not realizing that God is speaking does not mean that he is absent. Sometimes he wants you to walk for the promises that have been delivered before, instead of waiting for new orders. Have you noticed how Jesus often responded with silence, and yet was acting with power? So if God is silent now, understand this as a proof of trust. He believes you have already matured enough to keep walking through faith. And this kind of growth does not come in a loud voice, it comes in the whisper of presence. A whisper that only those who have already learned to rest in God's time is able to recognize. Hold firm. Silence is not the end, it is the preparation for the next movement of heaven. Most people pray for victory, but few are willing to go through the process that generates spiritual maturity. Growth does not only come with blessings, it is often born of pain, frustration, and silence. God is not only interested in making you happy momentarily, but in making you firm, unshakable, deep. And that takes time, renunciation, and perseverance. It is on this ground that true faith and trust flourish. What separates spiritually mature from those who only frequent spiritual environments is the way they deal with adversity. Who is mature knows that not every delay is punishment, and that not every struggle is loss. There is a time from God that cannot be rushed, and wisdom is in learning from each season. The mature person does not complain about the desert, he learns to extract water from him. Maturity is also knowing how to discern what is priority in the kingdom. It is to stop seeking only blessings and seek the blesser. That's when you pray not just to ask, but to listen, align, and obey. It is not a passive but active posture of someone who understood what divine purpose is worth more than personal convenience. And this change of focus changes everything around. Want to grow? Then stop fleeing the discomfort. Use the difficult times as a spiritual school. Recommended reading? William P. Young's The Cabana, who teaches us about faith and healing in the midst of pain. Spiritual maturity is not learned in a service, but in everyday life, when you forgive those who hurt you, sometimes when you are tired and continue even without understanding. It is in these silent decisions that spiritual giants are formed. Another sign of maturity is when you stop comparing your time with others. Understands that your walk is unique, your preparation is specific, and your collective mission will be activated at the right time. Envy and anxiety lose space for gratitude and contentment. And, curiously, it is when you stop running after what you think you need that God begins to release what He knows you are ready to carry. So if you are feeling tired, pressured, or even misunderstood, know that this may be evidence that God is leading you to a new level. The path of maturity is not easy, but it is rewarding. And when you look back and realize how much you grew up, you understand that every tear was investment, not waste. The good news? There is still much more to come. There is a kind of peace that is not explained, only feels. It does not depend on paid accounts, perfect health, or applause. It is that serenity that invades the heart even in the storm. And when it appears, it is a sign that something deep has been realized inside you. This peace is the seal that spiritual preparation is generating invisible but powerful fruits. Many people seek peace in the circumstances, but it is not born inside. When you begin to trust fully in God's time, spiritual restlessness gives way to tranquility. It is not conformism, it is spiritual maturity. That's when you understand that even without seeing anything moving, the sky is in action. And this confidence produces a calm that confuses even those who watch you. This peace usually appears when you stop trying to control everything. When you deliver your real paths without plan B and say, "Your will be done." It seems crazy, but this is where the soul finds rest. And do you know what is curious? Nothing around needs to change. What changes is the way you see everything around you, because now you are anchored in a divine promise. Want to try this? Start your day with a real delivery moment. It doesn't even have to be long. 10 minutes in silence, taking a deep breath, talking to God as who talks to a friend. Peace does not come from formulas, but of intimacy. One book that can help you with this practice is John Bunyan's The Journey. He portrays allegorically how peace forms along the path of faith. And attention, this peace does not make you passive, but confident. You act wisely, but without despair. Plan, but deliver. Works, but rest inside. That's why Paul, even arrested, could write letters of encouragement. The prison did not arrest his spirit because he was firmly linked to the divine purpose. And this generates a peace that is independent of any external scenario. So if you feel this peace coming even in the midst of fights, don't be alarmed. Hug. It is the confirmation that your inner transformation is underway and that you are closer to the prophetic destination than you think. This peace is more than a relief, it is a silent announcement that heaven is moving, even when everything seems stopped. Nothing in God is by chance. Every step, every tear, every silence is part of a strategic preparation for something new. When you are chosen by God, the process is not only spiritual, it is also intentional. It does not position you in a new place without first adjusting your interior. All you are facing now is part of the plan to align you with your divine purpose. This is not punishment, it is construction. It is interesting how, when we look back, we realize that the hardest phases were exactly the ones that molded us the most. That moment that seemed the end, in fact, was only the beginning of restructuring. God prepares behind the scenes with so much zeal that we often do not even realize that it is being trained. But it is. And each trial faced in silence is cutting its structure to endure what is to come. Want a practical example? Moses was prepared in anonymity for 40 years before leading the people of Israel. Joseph has undergone rejection, injustice, and oblivion before governing Egypt. Both lived long periods of spiritual, emotional, and even strategic preparation. And you? Are you going through something similar? Then embrace the process. He is training you for something that will impact lives beyond yours. During this time, it is common for you to feel like you are out of the scene, as if no one saw what is being built. But make no mistake, the heavens see you. Spiritual recognition happens first in the invisible, before manifesting on earth. It is like the growth of the roots of a tree. They happen below, in silence, before any fruit appears. And the deeper the roots, the higher the branches reach. Practical suggestion: map what you have learned in recent times. Write the challenges, the answers you received or their absence, and the repeated standards. This helps to understand the pattern of God's act on your journey. Books such as Elijah Desert by Hernandez Diaz Lopez offer valuable reflections on this time of preparation and waiting. Do not ignore the details. It is in them that God hides his strategies. And remember, God does not waste any details of your story. Each step that looks like delay is actually protection. Each door that did not open was avoiding you from entering places that would not bear its growth. The new one that is coming is not common, is supernatural. And who will be used to carry this new need to be prepared with depth, wisdom, and spiritual sensitivity. After everything you read here, stop a moment and look at your life. How many times have you felt that spiritual restlessness, unable to explain? How many doors closed just when you thought everything was fitting? And how many trials did you go through thinking it was the end, but were actually shaping you inside? Maybe now you realize that nothing was by chance. God was preparing you, teaching you to trust, even in silence. He was strengthening you for something bigger, something that is yet to come. The question is, what are you going to do with all this? Will you keep walking like just coincidence? Or will you assume your identity as someone chosen by God to live a divine purpose? This is not an easy journey, but it is real. And the peace you are looking for is not at the end of the way. It is born when you understand that you are already on the right track. When you accept the process, even without understanding everything. When you begin to trust God's time more than in your emergencies. So what will change in your life from today? Which choices can you make now that they are more aligned with what God is building on you? Reflect, or again reorganize your priorities. You are not alone on this journey, and all this has a greater purpose than your eyes can see. If this content spoke to you, subscribe to the channel, enable notifications, and share it with someone who also needs to hear it. There is a lot more coming around, and you won't want to lose what God will still reveal.